Hey everyone, thank you for joining this session. So today is a follow-up session. We had one couple of days back where we have gone through a case study of an end-to-end delivery management proposal. We tried to come up with a response for this ask, but with the time we had, we couldn't go through all, but we touched based on a couple of items like on the technology we used, on deployment architecture, various trade-off discussions, system architecture, tools, and so on. So in this session, I will try to provide a response for the case study, like how are we going to implement this project end to end. So before going to that, so I have prepared a couple of slides on those lines. But before going to there, just want to quickly recap what this case study is about in case if anyone is watching this for the first time. Hope you can see my screen. Let me make it a bit bigger. Okay, yeah. So this is the case study. We'll skim through what is the ask and then look at what is the response I have come up with. Yeah, so this is for a delivery manager who is responsible for the executing of the complete end-to-end strategy and execution and delivery. And this is the business challenge, the business problem. The client from supply chain management domain, he has a solution, but now he wants a different solution on different technology, for which he has given this project to us. And a couple of things what he's asking is specifically around there is a digital assistant which has to be and this digital assistant will streamline and simplify their supply chain activities, for which we need to build the technology and platform, both mobile, web. The scope of the project is an end-to-end digital solution, both web and mobile, and also maintain their enterprise ordering platform, implement some data tools and technologies, automation, some monitoring requirements, monitoring performance analytics basically, and all this they wanted to be happening in agile approach, and also documentation around training, run books, product documentation, all of it. This is the complete functional scope of this project. Along with this functional scope, some of the non-functional requirements, NFR, they have called out around performance, usability, security, availability, scalability, maintainability, configurability, supportability. There are a lot of them. Yeah. And this is a technology stack what they are proposing. In the last call, we have gone through details of these, so I will not be touch basing more upon each of these, but at a high level. I have prepared a slide on that. I'll share. Backend cloud, front-end, mobile, data integrations, and what are the expected outcomes. Assess the current project landscape, evaluate the data ecosystem, strengthen observability. All of these are part of the phase 1, and there is some work to be done in phase 2 as well. Some of the milestones they want to be specifically called out, accounted for in the project plan. Our mobile, test, automation, enterprise, platform, environment, data analytics, these are the deliverables. We need to provide end-to-end technology stack, or the deployment model, DevOps, any ASRs if they are, document the technical assumptions. So around technology, we need to provide solution, and also how are you going to address the non-functional requirements. Let me turn off the video for a moment. Yeah. Scope non-functional requirements, functional coverage, non-functional coverage. Okay, starting the program, initiation approach. How are you going to start the project? Delivery framework, Scrum operating model. What is the DOR and DOD which your teams will be having at sprint level? Engineering excellence practices. How are we going to use any AI? Need to call them out. What are the risks and dependencies? How is the project governance handled? Different meetings which happen, different reports, performance tracking, any leverage of AI, Gen AI for delivery. So all of these are the expectations which needs to be covered in the proposal, response for the proposal. Okay, with this background, this is the deck which I have prepared. We stop sharing and start once again, so that I'm sure you will. I know that this is visible. We get into slideshow mode. Okay. I'll walk through. There are 20 slides. I'll walk through each of these and my rationale in having few items and few items where I might not have intentionally included. As we go slide by slide, we'll also look at any kind of questions we'll expect, the kind of questions which can be asked, and I'll try to address those as well. Okay. So yeah, these are all the items which I have included. It might be looking as exhaustive list at this point of time because we are still at the project initiation. Not even initiation, this is before initiation. But I tried to give a perspective of how deep we would go once the initiation and planning have started and once we are there. So no need to be getting overwhelmed. In fact, like all of these items, few we might be having set up at the initiation phase itself, and few we might be having them up by planning phase, and few would be like kind of continuous documents which will be keep on updating throughout the project lifecycle. So here I called out what is the problem statement and given the overall context before getting the details. Then mention about system design, technical landscape, what are the high level architecture we're going to use front and back end. What is the deployment architecture, CI/CD pipelines, how the environments would be provisioned, the release strategy, few points around that. How are we going to implement the NFRs around performance, scalability, security, and so on. And what are the roadmaps? What is the roadmap looking at this point of time for this project, and what are the key milestones? These can be like kind of a stage gates or even key demos or even sign off milestones, key items, deliverable items which I have listed down, and then also provide a high level project plan with right from initiation till go live and hypercare, including the sprint agile phase of in between the implementation phase. In the same field, I try to call out what is the effort calculated, resources, how they're going to be loaded, different activities, dependencies, all of that. So this is a kind of Excel sheet which I come up with. I'll walk you through that as well. And yeah, mention about project governance, how this project is going to be controlled. What are the different meetings we will have, reporting structure, and different tiers, how the teams would be synchronized, and everyone will have a common view of all what is happening. Different escalation paths, how are you going to take decisions, all of that has been called out. And then few details on how are you going to start this project during the initiation phase, what are different activities which needs to be done, inputs of this phase or outputs, and also followed a specific discovery phase, because at this point of time we don't have much of information to come up with a robust project plan, but we want to have this discovery phase after which we want to get all those assumptions, clarified, firm up the scope, and then get into the planning phase. So the discovery phase I have called out during the project initiation. Mentioned about agile delivery, how it's going to happen with the 2-week sprints, and then some engineering best practices, or these need to be there. These are now become kind of basic practices for any application development. Test automation, how are you going to have it? Scope, performance testing, DOR and DOD, the checklists which the team uses before taking the work into the sprint and before delivering it, moving the items to production. What are the assumptions and dependencies we have? Risks and issues. I have identified few key risks, and I think one issue, we'll look at what they are and what is the mitigation strategies we're kind of proposing at this time. And as we had already some connects, there are some findings for which also some recommendations have been put forth. We will look at what are those and how can we leverage AI, Gen AI, and then a kind of working Excel I have put. So this is the kind of overview of all the activities which I have included in this presentation. Maybe free slide will take like 2 to 3 minutes. Yeah, that should be 40 minutes altogether from now. Okay, let's dive in. Yes, the introduction and context, I will not spend much time here, but yeah. So here, the solution approach, I tried to call it out, where at a high level, we are trying to rebuild the mobile applications, what they have with high performance native Android and iOS framework. Previously, Xamarin was used cross platform development, and now we are getting into native development frameworks due to various advantages which it has. Also upgrade the core enterprise services to the latest. I think they are at 6, and now we are recommending to go with .NET 10. .NET platform, I'm going to use most of the tools are from Microsoft stack. Also, we are going to enhance the data ecosystem using again Azure services. Implement some real-time monitoring so that all the updates, alerts, preventive actions, everything can be taken effectively. And also, as we are doing all this, we'll also have a secure, scalable, automation-driven DevOps, which will help seamless delivery of all the features in the production. This is our high-level approach, and these are the key deliverables. First is end-to-end modernization of the web and mobile applications for various features which are requested, and the delivery workflows. That's the first part. Second part is enterprise platform upgrades. They already have a big platform which needs to be updated. Some security hardening, some DevOps optimizations. We'll do an analysis and we'll identify with what all we can improve. Data monitoring, the entire data thing would be set up, data engineering and management. And some automation of critical business process, so there can be time saving, there can be less manual intervention, so that everything is tool driven or process driven. Okay, so here any questions which might come are, how do you quantify the ROI of building native mobile apps and upgrading the enterprise platform? Yeah, how do we quantify the ROI for this? That's a very good question. I'll take a note of it, and I will need to check on this from the sponsor and our pre-sales group. They definitely would have done some ROI calculations and business case to justify this project. So I would need to look on into those documentation, and then I can come up with an answer. with all the metrics backed by data on how this whole exercise is going to help from an ROI perspective. Yeah, this is the system design and the tech landscape. So I'll quickly walk you through. This might be looking small. Let me share you the original picture which I built on this app called Eraser. Oh no. Let me stop sharing for a bit and try to access that. This is the online tool called Eraser. I just did it on a free account. Yes, I got that. Let me share my screen again. Okay. Can this be bigger than this? Okay. Okay, so this is the client layer. We have both mobile and web, and called out different technologies which we are going to use for Android, iOS, and then for web, TypeScript and React, along with Figma for UX. And then we will be using GraphQL API. Then have a integration layer with EDA architecture, and from here we'll be having a REST APIs with different microservices for each, and all these would be developed on .NET. For each of these microservices, we try to have a dedicated database, Elasticsearch for search, Cosmos DB, which is a NoSQL DB. Cosmos is a database service. We are recommending Mongo API, and then SQL database. So this is at a very high level for now. And as we do the sessions with the architects, business engineering teams, then we will refine this architecture more. But for this is a high level view of where we are heading. And then we have included few components from a data engineering perspective, from analytics, Zookeeper, for coordination among all these services, ELK stack, Elasticsearch, Kibana, and L. Yeah, so I need to check what exactly is that in Azure Monitor. Basically, this is the observability platform. And then we are going to have a notification service and search service. All of these would be placed on Azure Cloud. So this is the high level architecture which we're kind of proposing. What you can see here, and then here we have front end, different technologies what we're going to use for mobile, back end, database, data management. Now the question which can be asked is, why did you choose React? For a couple of advantages which it has, and also we have that expertise within the team where we built these features in the past projects, and we had some discussions with the technical architect, and we have come up with React. And why mobile native app development? There are various advantages like performance, user experience. Everything is much better in native apps, though there is some additional upfront overhead work to be done, but the user experience is much better. How did we choose all of these technologies? So basically, if you see, most of these are on Microsoft stack, and then there is a landscape which this company is working under, and the recommendation what we have got from the technical architecture group. And within that, we try to propose some additional services. Yeah, so let's move on to the next slide, which is on deployment architecture. This is the deployment DevOps pipeline, which you see. There is a build pipeline. Everything is on Azure DevOps. Developers would be writing code and then pushing it into the pipeline, where unit tests and code analysis would be automatically run and triggered. And in case there are any issues, developers would be notified to fix them. Deploy to dev environment. And from there, so basically there's kind of sandboxes. And from then deploy dev environment, and then here some integration would be happening of all the builds developed by various developers, and on those integrated builds, integration tests would be run. Once those tests are clear, in case if there are any issues, notification would be sent, and once those tests are cleared, it would be moved on to the QA stage. Again, here various tests would be run, and then it moves on to user acceptance testing, where there would be demos run, sign-offs would happen. Once everything is fine, the DoD is met, it will be deployed to production. And once there is a production, again there is some monitoring and feedback which happens on these items. So this is the complete entire DevOps pipeline, which can be again at a high level classified into two parts. One is the dev pipeline, and another is the release pipeline. The dev pipeline, we have Azure repos on which code is built and stored, developed and stored. Again, it will follow all the pull requests, the complete strategy of development. There will be pull requests on which the code review would be done. Azure pipelines would be set up. CI builds would be triggered. Unit tests, artifact Azure storage. And then there is a release pipeline. QAT, automate tests, some gates and canary releases. Then we have some monitoring features which are there. So these are two pipelines, dev pipeline, release pipeline. We will use Azure Kubernetes service for orchestration, APIM for API management, CI/CD Azure DevOps, blue-green canary releases for mobile backend developments. Basically, releases would be happening for a smaller population and then increased over time. That is canary releases or blue-green. So this decision on which one to choose might not happen at this point of time, but once we are there, we have those connections with the engineering, the release team in the company. Then we will identify which one is good or which one to use in which case. And here are some engineering practices which we'll be following. In the branching strategy, we'll be using feature branching, where any new feature, the developers will be taking a branch, cutting a branch, and then building features, and then merge it into the main branch. For code quality, SonarQube, Sneak, and Zap. SonarQube is for code quality, Sneak is for vulnerabilities, Zap is for penetration testing. Security and vulnerabilities. There are different tools which will be used at each sprint. Some reviews are proposed: design review, feature review, change, go no go before release. What are the test metrics? Code coverage, UAT defects, leakage. All of these will be tracked continuously. And also some tracking on the DORA metrics, which is stability and throughput, to ensure to see how the delivery is happening. Any questions here? Some of the failure modes which can happen are at the pipelines, which needs to be monitored. continuously with a dedicated team. Yeah, the pipelines can be having some issues sometimes. We will be implementing queuing architecture where, though for any intermittent failures, can still be addressed. We'll be having thorough reviews in place, and also rollback strategies have not been mentioned here, but those also will be in place. Okay. Next, what are the different NFR and how are we going to? What are the key technologies around that, and how are we going to implement? Starting from first one, performance. Okay. Performance would be taken care with APM, Azure Service Bus, Azure Functions, implementing cache, load testing, skill performance testing, Azure clusters, implementing CDN, various cloud technologies to enhance performance. Edge caching, asynchronous processing, load testing, static content delivery. So I will not get into much details of this, but just walking through at a high level. Security, IAM, role-based access control, MFA, various technologies, techniques to enhance security will be put in place. Web application firewall, and some principles which will be used like least privilege, audit logging, network segmentation, availability. Azure availability zones would be chosen accordingly. Load balancer to ensure if in case if there is any issue with one server, the failover happens. Okay, scalability, horizontal scaling, event-driven architecture, maintainability. So it will be easy to maintain, make changes. Supportability. Extensibility. Open APIs. Contact first APIs, feature flags, modular API driven design, gain performance. Okay, this I need to remove. Okay, try to provide a high level view of how we're going to implement these NFRs. What are different roadmaps and milestones? Here are the different work streams. You have an Android work stream dedicated, then iOS, integration team or engineer, test automation, and then for platform, there is some work which needs to be done on platform there, and data DevOps teams. There are different work streams, each have different milestones to be met. Maybe this is a good time to look at the detailed project plan also, which I have prepared. Let me bring it up. Is the high-level scope which we are looking, broken down into epics and features. The high-level epics I spoke about in the introducing the product context. Each of these epics is split into various features. I will not go through each of these, but just give you a view. Like the example of phase 2, automated inventory reconciliation would be done, rule-based order routing and exception management, SLA monitoring automation, predictive insights for replenishment and demand focus, AI-driven operational process automation. So various requirements would be tried to fulfill during this phase, which is later. And then there are few items which are specifically called out as out of scope, like changes to third-party supplier systems, large-scale data warehouse redesign beyond monitoring dashboards, new business domains. So the scope creep is controlled at the start itself. Production support is not part of the project. It might be taken up later as an USW, but currently no. Hardware, everything for all of this, client is responsible. The legacy, product decommissioning outside agreed modules. So all of these are basically called out specifically to be out of scope. And for this entire project scope, this is the project plan, what I am proposing, which has different phases at high level: initiation, planning, execution, testing, go live, and hypercare and closure. All of these would be done across 7 sprints. So before that, there is some pre-work which needs to be done in initiation planning phase, then get into the execution, and then we will have a testing, go live, and hypercare and closure. This might seem like a waterfall, but after doing many implementations, a lot of these activities are repetitive and these are fixed. So here, Agile might be over-engineering. So we're introducing Agile only during the execution phase, where we will have certain leeway, flexibility to shift priorities, drop features, take new scope, all of that. But apart from that, for the rest of the activities, before and after, that's a typical. So basically, it's a kind of a hybrid project plan, what we are recommending. So here, I will not get into all of these details, but the questions which can be asked are, how many sprints are you planning? So we're planning like 7 sprints. And the other question which might be asked is, there are different work streams. How are you going to manage all of these so that they're all synchronized, basically? For which we have called out the dependencies across each of these. We are having common cadences of different meetings. Might not be all at team level, but at a program level, at a leadership or engineering and manager, that level, we have cross syncs. Like we have also Scrum calls. So there are few things which are common cadences which are there on top of it, on top of one layer. So all of these few teams would be synchronized. We have common demos, and yeah, the go live we are looking at is somewhere before go live, go no go decision, and then the go live and some hypercare. As we might expect few more additional support requests which might come in, issues which might come in to handle that. All of these we are looking at to happen after like 7 sprints. And then closure. So this is a typical kind of project plan, this level. And then once we have the planning sessions during the planning phase, a lot of this would be changed, revisited, not entirely, but tweaks as per the timelines, as per the constraints, as per the asks and requirements of each of the different work streams. And then this is the high level. Yeah, let me just check this. Okay. Yeah, this is the high level estimation sprint plan. Different epics. For each of the epics, what is the estimate? That we try to give it in days. And then for each of the epic, what are the high level deliverable? And then the estimate. Which comes to around 270. And that, and then to be mindful, these are plan days or man days. This is not the exact duration. This is the complete effort of a person, assuming that he's available for complete 8 hours. He's not doing any other work. And this is the sprint plan. For each sprint, try to distribute the deliverables as per the priority. And the team will be churning on an average of 35 to 40 story points per sprint. And here also we called out what are the dependencies to be met before each sprint. Here for sprint 1, infra readiness should be there, AP inventory should be available. For sprint 2, dependence on architecture, CA readiness, API contracts, inventory APIs, all of these dependencies also have to be called. If these are not met, the project might be off track. And we can see some delays which are happening. And then this is the high level activity list. In each phase, what has to be done. Like SOW, confirming the resources, the budget plan, review initial schedule, establish process, project kickoff, and then requirements phase, the trainings which are required, gather the requirements, design reviews, architecture reviews, security, data privacy, integration requirements, set up the instances environment, backlog creation, and then sprints. Sprint demo, retrospective execution planning, is the sprint cycle, Scrum sprint cycle which happens each sprint. Then SIT, system integration testing, performance testing, UAT, set up different instances, and have a robust testing phase also. User acceptance testing, support plan, deployment plan. During the testing phase itself, come up with all the plans, deployment plans, cutover, hypercare plan, everything which would be building in the next phase after go live and hypercare. Deployment, go live, hypercare, go no go decision, where each of the groups need to give their agreement, approval, sign off for release of the solution, production, and then have a closure. So these are the exhaustive list of activities try to call out. And then resource loading per sprint. Sprint 0, you might not need everyone, or the different kind of roles which are needed. And in different sprints, sprint 0, you might not need everyone, just the leads. And then sprint 1, and slowly the work increases, and also the resourcing would be increased, and then tapering up, and then again tapering down. A typical resource loading how happens in these projects. And then during hypercare also would not need everyone. This is the resource loading view which I try to share. And let me go back to the PPT again. Okay. Any questions here? What are the key deliverables we are planning? We are planning deliverables across each of these streams for Android, iOS, integration, platform. I have not put in list here, but we'll try to add that. Then let's move on to the next phase. Yeah, this is what we have just seen. Project governance. Different project controls. The project board, what are different roles and responsibility, decision how we're going to make the decision, risk management, performance monitoring. Each of these project controls would be put in place. And then different stakeholders. What is their role? Sponsor, steering committee, project manager, team members, any other external stakeholders which might come in. So all of these would be called basically the project control doc in which all of these would be maintained. For all of our projects, we do have this maintained, so that we will have effective control, documentation, coordination among the teams, which also governance structure, also responsibility, decision-making process, risk management, communication plan, change control procedures, quality assurance. Quite exhaustive list. Here are the different levels which I just mentioned some time back. At the team level, leads and managers, and then the steering committee. Different connects, meetings which are there are be called at the team level. There will be daily sync up, where sprint burn down would be looked at, what are the different blockers, CAC status, any defects, story progress. All of these would be discussed during the daily stand-up. The typical 3 questions which are recommended in Scrum and Agile. Along with that, a few more details would be taken during a sprint at a daily level. And then we have a sprint review retrospective towards the end. How many are completed? What's the process? Are there any improvements to be done? All the typical Scrum process, Scrum ceremonies would be happening at the team level, which as need basis would be cascaded up to the leaders and managers and steering committee. Leads and managers would be connecting weekly for a status review. What is the velocity, what is the completed story points, defect severity, automation progress, pipeline health, RAID updates would be looked at. And also there is a technical sync as required, so we can use the same meeting or we can have a separate dedicated call. Initially maybe dedicated call, and then it can be merged into the same weekly status meeting. There was the integration readiness, APIs, NFRs, tech debt, architecture changes, so all of that. And then release readiness review for each of the releases which we might have at the sprint level. These are for those. And definitely we will have a detailed call towards the end, but these are for any of the other releases which we might have in between, which will act as a go-no call for the interim releases. These are different meetings which leads and managers have. Then there is one steering committee which happens bi-weekly, where the overall RAG status would be presented, what is the different upcoming milestone, what the milestone we have closed, some project metrics like cost performance, like schedule performance, burn rate, scope changes or discussions, any risks, what is the release forecast, go on. So all of these at a higher level would be discussed and refined and taken care by the team at the steering committee level. So there are different 3 levels of layers which would be operating, and how are we going to coordinate among these, through which we'll be controlling the project teams. Let's move on. Project initiation. So how are you going to start this project? During initiation, these are the inputs which we will need. What is the problem statement? What is the solution intent? Pre-sales documentation to get all the details from those teams. What is the success criteria we are looking at? Very important. At the start of the project, you should know what are North Star and the key metrics, OKRs, we are trying to chase as part of this implementation. And then the outputs of this initiation phase would be getting a high-level scope timeline, stakeholder list, both the team, first, second, third degrees of stakeholder, the team, other teams this team would be interacting with, and anyone else who might be we need to include them in all the calls, communication, in the process, basically. Success metrics, much more refined success metrics. Project governance, agreed and aligned with all the team stakeholders, and a project charter, project brief with the outputs of the initiation phase. And what are the key activities which we will do? What are the roles and responsibilities? Who all will be involved? Deliverables checklist, kind of a sign off that we have complete initiation phase, and then we are getting into a planning phase. For initiation phase, what are the kind of success metrics we are looking at? And as I said, we are going to include one discovery phase before getting into planning phase. We provide a 2-week discovery phase with in-depth workshops to accurately define the project scope, allowing for realistic and effective project timeline. We might have connects with business, technical teams, integration teams, and then form up our scope and a project plan for the entire next few months. And for each of these phases, as we transition, we will implement sign-offs from the stakeholder that they are aware of these activities and they agree to these. In case of any support required, if any inputs are required from their side, that these are going to be deliverables, so on and so forth. So each of these phases, initiation, planning, execution, all of these would be having a sign-off. And also, if needed, at a sprint level as well, so that we need to take a call as we progress in the on the project. Okay, Agile delivery framework. The 2 weeks sprint rhythm we will follow as all the teams in the company. Now, not getting into question on why 2 weeks, why not 4, why not 1. There are again various criteria to it. That's a different topic. Yeah. So, and these are the different ceremonies which we'll be having as part of the Scrum Agile delivery. Sprint planning. Start of the sprint. We have a high visibility of all the sprints at the start of the sprint, but there might be some changes in the priority. There might be some changes as per the inputs which have to be met by the sprint start. So for those minor changes, again, we'll have a sprint planning session agreed among with all the team, product owner, Scrum Master, have a commitment at the start of the sprint, and then start the sprint along with the sprint goal. Once we have a sprint planning, then we will have daily stand-ups. Each day, the team will meet 15 minutes. They will update on status, plan for the day, what is the work, and in case of any issues anything which they have would be discussed during these quick sync ups. We will also have a mid-sprint health check on how are we progressing. And we can have a view of the burn-up chart, any sprint changes which have happened, how many story points delivered till mid-sprint. Various things can be checked. Basically, health check. And then a short note to the stakeholders that this is where we are. And then refinement sessions for the next sprint, next 1-2 sprint, we'll be having refinement sessions now. So ideally, it's always good to have a backlog of refined backlog of at least 2 sprint ahead. Towards the end of sprint, we'll have a call where the team will share to everyone, or the team, stakeholders, product owner, business, everyone who all is required, the more the better. We will present what the team has achieved in the last 10 days on the product. It can be the product owner can present, or even the developers occasionally would present. And then a retrospective meeting, after which we conclude the sprint. So in this retrospective meeting, team would discuss how they can improvise their ways of working. Then some engineering coordination meetings, cross-team architecture or syncs, or these can be scrum calls. And since we're having parallel work streams, there can be any integration connect also as required. The ad hoc meetings. So this is how the sprint rhythm is going to happen. Any questions which I can expect here? How do you handle spillovers? The spillovers would be handled case by case. The first approach would be to avoid spillovers, so that we have the right capacity, we have the right planning, the right commitments at the start of the sprint. But occasionally, sometimes it would happen where a quick sync up can happen between the product owner, the developer, the QA, Scrum Master, and then decide whether, in case if the partially done work is tested and fits the definition of done criteria, it can be released. In case if it delivers value, and slice the story. I mean, it will always be vertical slicing, where partial amount of work of development, peer review, testing, in case if it is good enough, that can be split, and then the remaining work can be taken as a new sprint, as a new story, or the entire work can be moved on to the next sprint, and need to see why this thing is happening. Is it because any QA is not available, or the development has taken more time, or we have estimated less? Various reasons. So this can be brought up in the sprint retro call, and then it can be discussed. So this can be minimized. Yeah, and it is not very stringent rule that all the sprints, all the stories have to be completed. Sometimes spillovers occur, but these spillovers need to be kept minimum. That is the only guidance here. And yeah, so let's move on to the next one. Engineering excellence in toolchain. Yeah, we will follow trunk-based development. Oh, okay. I think I need to change this. The start, I said it will be a feature branch. Yeah, some these names might have slight variations, but I'll try to have a common terminology, which is very important in project settings, where teams from a group of companies also can come together and work towards an initiative. And within internal company also, different teams would be having different standard, different nomenclatures. So having one standard terminology is very important in projects, so that everyone is speaking the same language. I'll change that. Continuous integration. Yeah, CI/CD would be deployed. Code quality gates. Sonar Cube is a tool which gives the code quality. Code smells. So all of those would be checked on sprint. We will try to use infrastructure as code tools, Terraform. An observability stack would be in place. API governance would be in place, where all the rules would be converted into JSON policies. Basically, all of these are implemented through implemented as code. Mobile engineering, so device farm testing for mobile engineering, which is part of the Azure services. We will use that. So there are some engineering practices and tools which we will follow, use, utilize in the project. And some points around test automation strategy and coverage. We will have this testing pyramid where 70% would be unit tests, API tests 20% of API service tests, and then some UX mobile tests would be 10%. We will have pipeline integration, performance testing, data quality. So basically all these are different tests which would be run in different stages of the pipeline and in different occasions. So all of these can be automated. Whenever a developer checks in a code, certain tests would be run and the results would be shared. In case of any issues, those also would be notified so that he'll fix them before redeploying and pushing them up further to instances. These are the definition of ready and definition of ready checklist before any story is taken to the sprint. It has to meet all of these items so that the probability of success of completion and the quality of the work would be much better. Few points which specifically called out at the definition of ready are user story clarity. Use the typical user story format. As a user, I want so that I can get this benefit. Acceptance criteria should be specified, dependencies identified, size and complexity. Basically, estimation should be done. Check on resource availability, whether it can be technology, information, or anything. Whether it's not just people, but even the VMs, those kind of resources. Capacity, those kind of resources. Stakeholder agreement. There's consensus among stakeholders. Everyone agrees on the story. No blocking issues. So no external blockers between the development of the story. Design and technical feasibility. This is refined by the team. So all of these have to be done before taking a story into the sprint. This has to be signed off by the developers. Only when all these are met, the developer, the team lead, signs it off and then takes it to the sprint. Like how a product owner or a business analyst or others in that role, they sign off the story towards the end of the sprint, saying that only if all these criteria are met, then this is going to be into production. Similarly, to take the work, the technical leader, the developer, the engineering, they can sign off on the DOR, saying that only when all these are met, then we will take that work into the sprint. That's one of the highly matured standard of practice. Few teams follow it. If not, have those discussions, have the technical discussions, reviews, refine it, and then take the work. Definition of done checklist. Few points which are mentioned here as part of definition of done checklist are: the code should be complete, code should be reviewed, all the tests passed, documentation is updated, performance criteria met, security complaints or no security issues, defects, all those automated scans are complete, product owner sign it off, UAT is done, is in a deployable state. So once all of these are done, we can say that a story or a feature is done. There's also one concept called done. So it might not be exactly going into the production when I say done, but for a team, it is considered as done. It is done for the team. Okay. What are the assumptions and dependencies? At this point of time, these are some of the assumptions and dependencies which we have. Key assumptions: the code base is accessible. There's API stability, team capacity, which we are working on. We have other available team. The infrastructure is in place. Stakeholders are available as and when any issues are required, any reviews need to be done, sign off. So all of these are basically the key assumptions on which we are starting this project. Some of the dependencies which we have are approvals, mobile distribution, data migration windows, network infrastructure, external integrations. These are the critical external dependencies which we are calling out at the start of the project itself, so that they can be proactively tracked to closure, and they will be available and closed by the time when these are expected. It can be sprint 5 or sprint 6 or sprint 1. The strategy here for dependencies are enhance the transparency of these dependencies, communicate proactively these dependencies, have owners identified for these dependencies, and negotiate on the timings on when these can be closed proactively, so that by the time we reach those dependencies, they are not slipping and we have things in control. And dependencies also has to be tracked separately in Azure DevOps, like these tickets. And in the tool also, we can have this control where we can create a link between dependent stories or dependent releases, dependent features, where only when few dependencies are met, certain thing can be started, or only when certain dependencies are met, certain thing can be closed. All of these through the tool also we can achieve better control for dependencies. Okay, moving on. Risks and issues. For each risk, you try to call out what type of it is, what is the impact of the risk, what is the status, what is the mitigation action also. For each of them, it is very important to also propose what is the mitigation, how are we going to address this risk, and have an owner for each of these, and also an ETA. This is the 10 kind of risks and one issue which we have identified at the start of the program. I'll go through one. A lack of complete documentation of the existing systems. The impact is high. What we're proposing as a mitigation is hold discovery workshops, request the missing docs, conduct architecture deep dive. Once all these three are done, then we can close this risk. This will not be a risk anymore. So that is how we came up with mitigation or path to green for each of these risks. Let us look at one more. Governance and communication framework not defined. Okay, establish a cadence, stakeholder map, escalation channels, have all the governance practices in place, so that this will not be more an issue. So it's currently now an issue because maybe we don't have visibility on whom to consult to get the the OKRs or scope defined or high-level milestones, take a sign off. We don't know all of that at this point of time. So that's why it's called out as an issue. And without having that, we cannot move on to the next phases of initiation or even starting or the kickoff. Okay. And then as we had already some meetings, connects with the team, we observed these few issues. Like there are some scaling issues in the existing architecture. The system architecture we are unable to. Basically, there are some modularity compatibility issues. There are legacy systems which are not supported. Single server instances, on-premise and not on cloud. These are the issues what are there which we have seen, for which these are the recommendations what we are proposing. Ensure transparent reporting and stakeholder engagement at the right level. No clear accountabilities are defined. So this is called out as a issue also, because the governance structure, everything is not there. Implement a RACI from the initiation phase, set up cadence for status and reviews. Middle managers not consulted. Discovery phase and workshops. Lack of business understanding, missing business team engagement, save business product owners. Business teams are not engaged for us to get the right requirements. Internal technology product development process will be aligned with well-defined phases and sign-offs. Change management process will be put in place. Weird inconsistency will be minimized with consistent epic stories and formats. So there is some In the documentation also, I see there are a lot of gaps, which are rightly called out in the risks and issues, but also these are the recommendations on how we are going to mitigate and progress on those. And yeah, some cases where we will be using AI and GenAI for delivery acceleration, documentation and knowledge, observability, getting some predictive insights. We might not be building any solution, but we will leverage all the capabilities which are there in the native form, like Copilot, for example, or uh, within the each of these technology stack, there would be some inbuilt assists. So basically, leveraging all of those as needed, we will progress. And in case if there is something which is notable, which is impactful, which is discovered in the process, definitely we'll have it as separate SOW, as separate scope. Our team will be happy to work on it and propose some solution. Okay, this brings us to the end of this presentation. In case if you have any questions, you can post in the comments right back, and I will put both of this deck as well as the Excel sheet in the description of this video so that you can refer. Hope this is helpful, where you got to gist into the real time how projects would be started. I mean, may not be to this level at the initiation phase itself, but all of these would be coming at different points in time of the project. All of these documents, practices, what we have touched based upon. And yeah, hope it was useful. See you in other video. Thank you.